Welcome to the Cryptozoology Show with your host, the cryptozoologist. And this episode, mammoths and the case for living mammoths, and some updates and some strange old tales of Bigfoot and some other odds and ends mixed in, as well as a redo of the one of the films there of the Florida tree bending Bigfoot. For some reason, again, this compression issue, when you try and crop these, it causes issues. So what I'm going to try is leave a bigger, wider space all around it, sadly, but maybe this will fix it. So we'll keep experimenting until some way we can do this without this occurring. But it seems when you put in a movie or do any strange sort of things, the something will occur, or it won't crop right, or with these weird things, right? And it's very difficult to deal with. But these sort of things. Oh, I just wanted to comment. I appreciate all the comments and that sort of things. And I've had several people from scientific ones to tell me, this, that, right? However, there was one guy there that obviously does, and obviously not a subscriber, but I just wanted to say, come on. I mean, really, like, if you didn't get the meaning of the Loch Ness Monster show or any of my water monster shows, if you haven't gotten the meaning yet, it's very extremely straightforward. People are lying to you, and I don't care who they are, any skeptic in the planet. There is lake monsters in lakes, in bodies of waters and rivers and lakes, and even the odd pond has gotten these things in there. Many of them are known by science. They're actually everything from seals to wayward whales and all kinds of other creatures that can get into bodies of water, and these people are not all lying to you. This is 100% factual thing, where dozens and dozens of bodies, even, and things, and including one I go in the book there in Lake Utopia, is actually well in the papers. Everybody looked at this. There was a 40-some foot sort of carcass dead found in the thing that is much bigger than any sort of possibility of a animal that should be living in a lake, right? I cover all kinds of films now that have shown up in recent years that are not CGI, that clearly indicate to you that they're not sturgeon, they're not other things. In some cases, they are a sturgeon, and this is the whole point. Is I don't spend my time sitting in pubs. I've never been on Loch Ness. The whole point of it is what I'm explaining to you, very straightforward, is I have over 150,000 hours out on the water experience. So I don't care what some other individual's opinion is in these things, because I'm telling you that it's easy to tell away from boats most of the time. There is odd, rare exceptions and weird things that can occur, but even at that, if you diligently look and see some of the other things, especially if you see solid objects underneath the water, this cannot be created by a wave, or solid objects sticking out of the water that are truly solid. They're not a wave piece, right? So these things, like the Joe Nichols answers that it's always a log or that it's always a boat wake and these kinds of things, is not true. However, the Loch Ness Monster is not a plesiosaur, it's not a mosasaur, it's not any of these things, because even if these things have visited or are trapped in the loch, the odd one, it could be, because some of the sightings do clearly indicate a creature like that. However, a vast majority of sightings all the time in most lakes are actually of numerous things, not one thing. But they create the sort of the Loch Nessie legend, because it is a fact, no matter whether people like this or not. Seals and walrus have both been recorded, photographed, and captured in Loch Ness in the past, okay? Other sorts of things, from sharks to numerous multi-species of saltwater creatures, could feasibly get up through the river Ness and other weird things at high water levels, even ages ago, and can get flopped in there. And there's very possibility that there's underwater caverns that reach the sort of ocean in many bodies of water worldwide, and this is the answer. So I'll go through this all in the books and things, showing you, yes, that there is unknown snakes to serpent-like creatures to science for sure. There's these worm-like creatures from Lake Storjo to all kinds of them and things like that. That these things are actually real and they're not that mysterious anymore because there's enough films out there even now to corroborate a lot of these sorts of things where you can't say it's a sturgeon or it's an eel or this or that. Some of the things are very clear. But again, the Loch Ness Monster is a multi-species monster body of water because there's creatures have ability to get in and out of there somehow, likely is the most plausible answer, or that in high water levels in the past, the odd things have flopped in there and they're barely surviving, sort of thing. Whatever the case, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, lake monsters truly, there is scientists sound to be silly because the evidence is beyond human comprehension, beyond and things even myself have seen and photographed. I saw Ogopogo, and I'm telling you, it was not a seal, it wasn't a walrus, it wasn't a moose, it wasn't a whale, it wasn't any of these sorts of things. It looked to me like some kind of titanic eel, except its head was propped out of the water at a strange sort of more serpentine-like angle, okay? And the thing was moving up and down instead of side to side. But I didn't see it that long. Maybe they could do both because I've heard reports. Some people say that they see it go side to side. And in some of the videos that I cover, these are clearly not CGI. They really are showing an animal that is not explainable by a sturgeon or a regular size eel. So no matter what, even if it's a giant eel, it still isn't accepted by science, yet these things exist. And like I showed you, already ones that were thought mythological just a few years ago have shown up now where a 20-foot plus specimen of an eel has been brought in on a rod and reel sort of idea, like on a commercial like sort of things, right? So I'm not sure exactly if they reeled it in on a rod and reel or used some kind of other methodology, but whatever the case, they got in a 20-foot plus eel out of there, proving that these stories were correct in the past from others that have reported these sorts of things. And there's, again, ancient evidence to today of occasionally of these sort of giant eels that are not known to usually inhabit fresh water do go up these sort of things sometimes, and especially in the Thames there's old records of people catching them and things. So to me, I don't find this that very much mysterious at all. I like I said, I've been on thousands of lakes, right, and fished all over the place and this sort of thing. So I don't spend my time at a pub. I rarely drink. And yes, and some of these shows, because I had to stop at feeding my cat, somebody's at the door, whatever, I don't remember because I can keep going on and on and on. And sometimes I'll forget where I last stopped off. And to then go through all the videos again and all this when I'm in a hurry, sometimes I can't do that. So I do repeat the odd thing, but that has nothing to do with booze or other things, right? So you know, come on. I mean, seriously, like I thought it was pretty clear. I know a lot of people don't like these answers because they all want Nessie to be this one little lonely monster that's millions of years old that has survived in there and all this foolishness. But the bottom line is that I'm telling you, there is unknown animals to science. This is guaranteed, and new ones will keep cropping up every second. Even scientists admit to us now that there's probably massive hundreds of thousands to millions of unknown creatures still left on this planet. You get a lot of famous scientists are actually saying this, yet these same guys, the second somebody says there's a Bigfoot or any of this stuff, right? Like, I mean, come on. I mean, seriously, right? Like, so, and again, every year there's some kind of supposed, species that was supposed to die out millions of years ago, is still floating around, right? And these sorts of things. So, I mean, all this stuff is not sort of, again, you can't prove the datings of the Earth. I choose to believe my ancient ancestors. They show you massive tons of dinosaurs. They're showing you mammoths. They're showing you all kinds of things. There's no way that in fact, I cover one in here, a Florida one, right? It's impossible that these guys knew how a mammoth would have been loaded full of fur and all these sorts of things on them because there's an actual cave there of this cavern system that we'll cover and this sort of thing. And they found this, and it clearly, now these guys dated at 16,000 years. As far as I know, this is thousands of years ago, right? Like I said, this stuff is not proven, right? So, but the point is it does prove that in a Florida market, in warm stuff. Now, all the skeptics claim that the reason why people claim they saw mammoths and they knew what they looked like in cave art is because they found them frozen, right? But in this case, you can't say this. In the Florida market, this bones and everything would have been eaten away quite warmly quickly, right? And this sort of thing, and it wasn't in Antarctic then. So then how do you explain how they know exactly precisely how the creature looks so well? Right? So these sorts of things, like, come on, I mean, seriously, like, so people just believe this sort of thing because it was made up a long time ago to be anti anything of the godlike things. But I'm not a preacher to you. I don't care of these sorts of things because every human being makes mistakes and has sinned of some sort, right? So any preacher you're listening to, I guarantee you that guy has sinned multi times over. He may not believe he has, but he does. I've been to since little churches, and this is so. I just want people to know, if you aren't a religious person, there's no reason not to sort of hear out some of these things, because I'm not a Bible preacher to you. I'm just showing you historic sorts of facts that do cooperate with the Bible a lot of times, showing that it's a very accurate sort of document. You can't prove the godlike guy, but you can prove many things, other things that you can actually go look at, and they're there. Like, there's an interesting one, these guys just recently, you can go watch this film, it'll blow your friggin' mind. I mean, blow your mind, okay? There's the part where in the Bible he says that the rocks split for the Israelites and this water came bursting out and everything. They found this. All these things exactly as these guys describe, exactly. It's somewhere near the Iranian desert, someplace out in this sort of thing. You can find it on YouTube. I can't think of the name of this video, but this is the only time that people have ever been allowed in there. These guys snuck in there, and they took a real risk in life. But exactly as the Bible describes this, and it actually shows that there was this power of water that must have bursted through it. So how do you explain this when there's nothing else all around this, and they're telling you exactly this sort of thing, and yet all the structural things still there? I mean, mind-boggling. I mean, and many of these other sort of things. So whether or not they were aliens from outer space, it was a god guy, or great people that had great illusions, sort of stuff. The bottom line is that somebody was able to burst water through sort of stones and do all these crazy sort of things exactly as they describe, indicating that, again, as the Bible states to you, that things are true. You can't, again, prove, did God do that, or an angel, or a space alien, but somebody had great technology and power then, right? So these are interesting things, right? So keep these things in mind, that just because the odd time I mention a minister guy or this and that, and you're dubious of Christianity and all these sort of things, it's still an historic sort of record of a person mentioning in their own memoirs that they saw a dragon or a mammoth or these kinds of things. I mean, come on. All right. And I have many in here that I didn't show, some are even private ones, including what I found in a diary of another sort of a monk-like sort of fellow that was in actually northern far Quebec in the 17th century, and saw this whole pack of these sort of giant elephant-like creatures, sort of thing. and it's fascinating, right? Like, I mean, so the guy's description, he said they were rare then, and that the natives around there would try and get them at any sort of cost, wanted them because they could provide a lot of food, right? So probably they didn't last much longer around the spot, right? But so even in Quebec, you get this. There's all kinds of places, right? So we'll cover some of these things, but just keep these things in mind, that just because it's a biblical thing sometimes or other sort of things, the bottom line is that uh, our ancient ancestors in every place are telling us a giant flood occurred. Right in recent times, they proved on Mount St. Helens what scientists thought took millions of years to occur happened overnight. Exactly the same layering and all the kinds of things, exactly is what they base all this gobbledygook on, right? And now there's even spark plugs found inside of ones where they're dating them 250,000 years and all this. Obviously, a spark plug wasn't around 250,000 years ago, indicating again that the dating of the Earth is complete fallacy. There's no way of proving this, but if there is a way of correlating that thousands and gazillions of endless amounts of references from our ancient past all tell us that a flood in over 5,000 cultures all tell us that a flood occurred. And why all these scientists are so amazed every time, we have no idea why they left the area. They left the area because of the flood, you baboonies. Like, I mean, seriously, it makes such common sense. Every place they say, oh, we don't know why they banished the civilization, and then that obviously there was a flood or some kind of cataclysm, and they're sort of in, and all these guys are telling you the same wacky thing. And a lot of them, when they ended up on these places, the cultures of today, they have no idea who built it in the past. They say they found them that way. Okay, like, and even the Egyptians, yes, they did make some of their own pyramids and things like that, but they're not remotely good like the original ones. And it seems they tried to copy the sort of idea and that sort of thing, but they weren't remotely successful in the same kind of thing, or using the same kind of monster stones here and all that, indicating that whoever did it previously, this is pre-flood stuff, and these guys knew whatever. If you're going to accept all this biblical things that some mighty beings in the sky explained and showed them how to do these things, or maybe possibly did it themselves, whatever the case, right? But anyways, there's all kinds of ancient history that completely shows you that dragons, dinosaur-like creatures were with man, all these sorts of things. These guys are, their case is getting weaker by the second, right? Here's a better way to, even if you're not a sort of religious guy, people, you really should watch this guy's video. This is amazing. I just saw this the other day, never heard of the dude in my life, but he's some kind of Australian teacher, and he has his degrees and all those big science things. So even if you don't want to listen to some of my things, or the zoologist that gives me some information on different ones, it doesn't matter. This guy, I'm pretty sure, will impress you. Now, he will be more preacher-like than what I would do, or this sort of things. However, he really shows you scientifically that, and this is, he has massive millions of views here, he shows you scientifically that every single thing in the Bible is actually a very common sense to it, and that it was really thousands of years ago that this had occurred, and these kinds of things. And this guy explains a lot of the things that I tried to explain in other videos on my dinosaur pieces. He has some extra things in there that I think are very important, that you'll sort of understand the whole thing. That I've tried to talk about this before, like there's this light matter and these kinds of things, and matter has never been known to absorb information and pass new information on to the next matter, and completely the opposite of what sort of these scientists guys say with their explanation of how we were built from this matter and blah, 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 and it goes up the certain thing. So listen to his video. It's absolutely fantastic. I think if you typed in something like scientists hate this video or something like this, you probably find it like, but he actually, it's very forgetting that he's a religious guy and forgetting that he's going to tell you the odd time super god here, what the man is saying scientifically is correct. Okay, and that's why these scientists don't like this sort of show, right? However, it clearly will show you that everything from the dating of the earth to all these sorts of things is just complete, as I've told you all along, imaginary. And here this guy has better scientific like degree and everything to explain it a bit better than what I can to you, right? But the thing is that he knows this sort of things, just like I know my fishing things, and others are to, you know, each one is expertise, and this guy really sort of cut it down properly, what a lot of the sort of things I mentioned in other shows, but I think very thorough, where even the most skeptical person has now got to wonder a little bit, right? And these sorts of things like that, right? And that sort of thing. Oh, here's another interesting one too that I forgot to mention. Okay, they claim that these woolly mammoths, okay, before we get into all these sort of things, there was another one that I should have shown, but you can actually see it with David Childress. He was out, and I think it's in Lake Michigan, and because the water level lowered at this certain sort of time, they actually found these carvings right out exactly where this basin would have been carved out by a giant iceberg, the flood, right? Thousands of years ago, not millions and all this kind of stuff, right? And so the thing is that when the Great Lakes was created thousands of years ago, that's what I believe. Okay, the iceberg, yes, chiseled through there and sort of made this sort of big giant saltwater, freshwater body water. There were some monsters stuck in there and all kinds of stuff, and different creatures and animals are all stuck in this sort of thing. But at that time, there was natives living down there, and on the stones they clearly depict woolly mammoths that they're hunting and things. Come on, I mean, seriously, again, how would they know this when that wasn't an ice age place then, right? So again, even if you found a fossil of a part of one or stuff, the thing is that they always got him with the fur on him and all this sort of thing. The fur would have eaten away and died out massive moons before supposedly we were on the scene, if you're going to listen to these guys, right? so anyways, we'll continue on, and so sorry about the last show there again with these compression problem here, but it does clear up after a few seconds, and but for some reason one of the films there didn't really turn out that well. So although scientists claim mammoths died out before man, historic evidence from cave paintings, early newspaper reports, records and portraits of a queen in Russia owning some, seems these creatures may have or do exist with man. So, I mean, clearly you can see one here, right? I mean, like another thing I always laugh at is these skeptics with this stupid idea that they mistaken rhinos and woolly woolly rhinoceroses and things for unicorns, and this every one of these ancient cave paintings, you see these guys do a pretty decent job. I mean, some of them are so meticulous, it's mind-boggling, and they showing you all this sort of thing. So you're trying to pitch that these guys were all chimp men. I mean, the guy understood shading here. Look at the shading. He's even got the sort of different shading like sort of areas. Come on, I mean, really? These people were just intelligent as we are today, exactly the same, except they lived in a caveman-like environment. There wasn't any I don't know, Jacques Cousteau, like guy that wanted to explore the planet. They're happy in their own little zone, and the only thing they're worried about is finding a mate eventually, and and let's eat some food, right? But I mean, that doesn't mean that they were stupid. I mean, they just weren't taught the sort of things, or had these sort of curiosity at that point to sort of do any of these sorts of things, right? But the point is that as far as them being able to learn things and obviously having some kind of basic understanding of art here a little bit and these sorts of things, it shows they couldn't have been that fried, right? Sort of thing. Okay, so here a recent discovery cave art in France clearly proves this 3,000 years ago, saber-toothed tigers and woolly mammoths were alive. Now this time these guys are actually dating it really early, which is surprising to me. I'm surprised they're not in trouble with somebody. But anyways, this one was found, and this is only 3,000 years ago. Okay, so, according to all these scientists, these saber-toothed tigers were hunted out way, zillion years before that sort of idea, and these woolly mammoths here. But clearly, you can clearly see that this is, occurring here, right? And so. And so, anyone suggesting we're found frozen fossils again, I mean, you're pitching foolishness here. Like, I mean, these guys are clearly indicating they knew what both creatures were. So even if you found two different fossils, how would you know that that guy eats that guy? Right? Like, I mean, come on, seriously. Like, I mean, really. Right? So, here, let us look at some more mentions here. Artwork showing the beast that's still alive. Here's this early sort of depiction, sort of thing. Now, here's this one. An 11-year-old boy had discovered this ancient cave art here just recently. Clearly shows the same thing. I mean, seriously. Like, I mean, really. Like, what else you can? Even the guy's got the little eyebrow above and everything. Yet you're trying to again say that he's this chimp man sort of thing. Come on, I mean, really, I can't believe people believe these guys. I mean, again, there's people with deformities of today. There was that caveman in Morocco. The guy lived in a tree, and I mean, world's longest sort of arms for that sort of thing, right? And that sort of thing. A trillion to one shot here was that he's supposedly the child of an ape man that raped some lady on this sort of island, right? And this sort of thing. And the guy goes, ooh, he does everything chipmanish. If they found his skeleton, I guarantee you they would claim he was, some Neanderthal man and he was the missing link and all this sort of stuff. Complete hogwash. We have this all built in our DNA like sort of thing. And what happens is occasionally, since ancient times, there was in a place like this in caves, you might have more caveman like skulls and stronger stuff to protect yourself from your crazy neighbor that isn't that sociable yet. You haven't worked out a big sociable sort of lifestyle yet. There's a lot of warring, battling going on. The body eventually starts to learn to sort of program a little bit better sort of things, right, of certain ways. So when the scientist guy of today, because he's been taught by his mommy that he's this great genius, he looks upon them like these are little chimp men and they must have been all stupid sort of things because they had funny shaped heads and all this. This is all presumption and sort of a complete hogwashian sort of things, right? And this what I'm saying is that all these examples exist today of humans where the guy is very intelligent, but he has a funny cranium. One guy's got a horn growing out of his head. There's all kinds of these examples where they match these ancient things that they found where they're claiming they were a chimp man, right? so again, there's a lot of things to these things, right? So, but here, Colonel Fowler mentions when he was in Alaska for 12 years in the 1860s that he met natives that told him of a giant hairy elephant-like creatures with giant tusks that they would kill, mostly near the Snake River. And even some kind of politician guy around there after had mentioned some kind of thing that this area was just loaded full of them still, and one of the last places where they could be sort of hunted, right? So, I mean, fascinating. This is 1860s, right? Sort of thing. Here, another one in A.M. Gullin, a French chargé, was told by Russian hunters he followed large tracks in the taiga forest and saw a giant beast with tusks and huge feet. Okay, so this guy actually had followed this. I remember this in the Bernard Hubelmann's book, On the Track of Unknown Animals. I think it was in there, sort of thing. And this guy mentions that these people around there, these Russian hunters and sort of things like that, they knew of this sort of creature. And this taiga forest is over 2 million square miles, right? So it's very feasible that still, even to this date, there could be areas that hasn't been hunted that much that these things could exist, sort of thing, right? But the point is that this guy followed these tracks for ages in the snow, and this sort of thing, and he finally came upon sort of one of these dudes, right? And that sort of thing. And there's another man here named Yemek in the 16th century in the Ural Mountains. He reported about a giant elephant with tusks seen locally, and they called it in the local name translation would mean mountain of meat. So I suppose, right, sort of thing. So again, humans hunting them out quite quickly, right? But some of them did survive. Now, sadly, I was not able, and I'm still not able to find this, and it's making me really peeved. I mean, just it upsets me to no end because I really wanted to put this piece in there. But I swear to you on a stack of Bibles, whatever you want, that there was this early queen. I don't know if she was the first queen of Russia, but one of the earlier ones. And she has this artwork collection, and in her artwork collection, there's these mentions that she owned these mammoths. They called them a different name, but it means the same thing, right? And it clearly shows her riding around with them and things like that. And apparently they were given to her by whatever, like sort of thing. So what I'm telling you is that I do not believe that you got records of some lady feeding these creatures, riding around with them. You got 100% perfect depictions. So that would mean that the guy that, because you had in those days, they had these photographers that were painters. The guy had to make everything accurate, and this queen wanted herself showing around what she did throughout the day. So they made this whole sort of mural-like thing of different poses of her doing different things, and one of them clearly she's riding in a carriage with a mastodon. I mean, absolutely beyond a shadow of a doubt here. And she mentions in the things like that, some of her old records mention that she had some of these, right? I believe more than one. So the point is that they could have even been kept live for even thousands of years by sort of early zoo-like sort of things that early monarchs would have just passed on, right? And this sort of thing. So, I mean, anyways, there's no way to me that this lady's, why would some guy make these paintings and everything to show things that don't even exist, to commemorate a queen at the time when he's doing these? I mean, come on. I mean, it makes no common sense, but it would. Since they mentioned that they fed them, they were pets, they were owned by the queen, and this is her riding one of them with this carriage. I mean, come on. I mean, seriously, it's more logical that it was real and that they actually did survive up until at least these sort of eras, right? Sort of thing. Here, let's look at some more here. Now, the skeptics claim that every time it's that these these woolly mammoths must have been because they found a frozen one. How do you explain this one here? The Florida prehistoric site with carved artwork date thousands of years old. Skeptics claim, again, this fine frozen mammoths, and they imagine them alive. Well, then how is this that, because in the Florida market it's very warm, right? There's no ice. So how would these guys know exactly what this creature looked like to the T and give a pretty decent carving of them there? I mean, the elephant legs are wonderful and everything about it. I mean, it's exactly the big long tusks there, the whole do. So again, how did they know that? Because the odds of them, like even if they found a sort of a fossil-like thing, it seems that they're describing like skin-like sort of stuff here. They got the sort of the tusks and everything. Like, in other words, I mean, come on, really? Like, that's right. So, and again, you find these where they're hunting them, clearly indicating, again, that humans caused their extinction, right? But there's still reported, still to this date, in the taiga forest and some other sort of places. Here's one from 1803, from the Hudson Bay records again. I love this Hudson Bay, guys. Here's another excellent one. 1803, June 1st, right? This guy had left from a fortnight's distance from this place called York Fort in Hudson Bay. It's in Manitoba, okay? But anyways, this guy a fortnight into the sort of forest, right? The guy's walking along, and all of a sudden he sees this giant 20-foot tall, shaped like an elephant, black shaggy beast with 2-foot wide prints. Okay, a similar account, same region of other witnesses seeing large elephant-like creatures in Manitoba in this early 1800s time. I've never seen a modern account after sort of these sort of 1800 sort of things. So I don't know whether there could be, but anyways, there's not a massive pile of case here. I have several dozen more of these stories, including some from early newspapers out west and different ones like that, and I'll cover them more in the book and certain things like that. But I just wanted to give you an idea that it's very likely. I don't know if they exist now, but it's very likely that at least in the 1800s there was still some of these dudes around. Oh, I wanted to comment. There's this crazy film where somebody claims that a woolly mammoth is walking across a river in Alaska or someplace or something. It's a complete hogwash. I 100% can guarantee you that's a bear, and he's carrying a salmon. The creature has no sort of large ears on the side whatsoever. You can clearly see his beak-like muzzle there in the front, and he's positioning and holding a salmon like bears often will do. And because, like I said, I wrestled a bear and I fed them and all kinds of sort of things, I'm pretty familiar with what a bear looks like, sort of thing. And I'm guarantee you that that isn't. I would love it to be one. I wish it was. However, that one is not, and it's just a bear crossing a river. So, but anyways, that's not. There's no tusk there really. All you're seeing is I can clearly see the salmon shape in it, and that sort of thing. It's a salmonoid of some sort. I can't see him clear enough to guarantee you he's a rainbow trout or a sockeye salmon or whatever, right? But he's definitely a salmonoid of some sort, good enough of the shape there that's popping out of his mouth that assures me that that's what it is as a bear. So anyways, but it's just an interesting sort of things there. But I guarantee you at least when this queen was alive, I don't know exactly, 17, the 1800s, early 1800s, maybe 1600s, I'm not sure, somewhere in this sort of range. I lost this thing. I can't find it, and it's peeving me off because it's so wonderful. I mean, it would have really added to this show, right? Because, I mean, clearly, the lady's describing this, the people are painting it, it belongs to her artworks. That they say that she owns some of them. I mean, what more do you want? Why are you calling some ancient queen a liar? Why would they lie about such things? Do you think they cared what the opinion is of Forrest Gallant today or somebody else, some big scientist, right? They're not going to sort of care about that sort of thing, right? They wouldn't have known that a giant sort of woolly mammoth isn't supposed to live, right? So there'd be no reason to make this up. So in other words, I don't care what anybody claims, they did exist up until at least recent times, and as far as I know, over 2 million square miles, and still some even reports from the 1970s is about the last that I've ever sort of found, sort of thing. And I mean, some of these are quasi not that reliable to me, but the point is it could be. But at least I know for sure that, and this Queen's time, likely they still existed, and I doubt that the same thing, these Manitoba stories are probably true. It was probably some just relic population that survived up there. It's feasible. So, but anyways, we'll continue on with some other interesting sort of ones here. Here, strange Bigfoot, the Nakani. According to Michael Basin in his book, The Arctic Forest in 1924, he describes these giants were covered with fur, with enormous height, with 3-foot human tracks. 3 feet! Holy bazzoles, man. That's like the ones that are reported up in the sort of Almisti sort of areas, like these super yetis, right? And occasionally old BC sort of ones and some other monster ones from time to time. You'll run across an interesting one like that. But I mean, it's a fascinating sort of book. But I mean, this Nakani, what's interesting though is scientists sort of corroborate some of this story to a degree. In this sort of range, they also found, these scientists independently, nothing to do with the story or book, but they found that there must have been a race of these gigantic sort of people, because they had actually, and they have no explanation how they did this, they carried these titanic stones just like a Stonehenge. They weren't as big, but they were still super huge, way bigger than what, yeah, unless somebody had horse and buggies and advanced sorts of equipment here, maybe you could have done it. But the thing is that somehow these giant ape people sort of that apparently were furry and really left themselves alone, and they were titanic in height. Okay, by just even the things they were carrying, they found a whole evidence of their village, and mysteriously they ran away too, right? So again, was that the flood or something else, whatever the case, right? But this sort of thing. Another sort of interesting one, the killing or kidnapping of people, same region, giant stories found showing evidence of a tribe. Like, I mean, it's very interesting, that sort of thing to it, that scientifically even they found sort of that would sort of match some of this Nakani sort of descriptions and things like that. So quite interesting. I don't know if they found any sort of skeletons of them much, but they just know that they were very large by the things they were using and that sort of thing. But very interesting. Next, here's an older sort of account here, the Maryland's Sykesville monster. So there he is, sort of, right? So again, why is it always the same, right? He looks identical. You see how there's no neck on him here? Now, come on, every time that the paper gets this correct and the sort of things, I mean, really? Right? And no, the footprints weren't over-exaggerated too much here. They were a decent size, 13 inches long and about 7 inches wide, which is about the same width as the ones I found in Florida, sort of. I think they were a bit longer than that, but I mean, similar sort of width here, right? Sort of idea. And so just another mystery sort of one there, but this Sykesville beast was seen around, leaping around and that sort of thing like that, and lots of reports of it for a little while, and then it seemed to have, vanished in outer space as they typically do. Now, here's a fascinating one. This one's really an ancient cavern story, 1800s here. In this Indiana, and so this sort of ape-man sort of monster, okay, was living inside of this caverns, right? And I mean, the sky is completely covered full of fur. It's kind of hard to read off of these small ones here, but you can blow this up, this clunk on it, and you might be able to blow it up, and you can sort of read through it. But it's fascinating. Another sort of, they'd hear these growls in the sort of caves and stuff, and the same thing. He's this big, giant, hairy sort of ape man, exactly the same. Every time it's the same, right? And they're always living in the caverns. Indiana to Nebraska, doesn't matter where it is. It's always the same sort of story. And usually in these states, there's not many of these. So it's just the odd wild man. So again, if likely these stories are true because there was more sort of forest and these kinds of things, especially back in those days. And there was a bit more of these wild people floating around than what there probably is of today. But just another sort of interesting ones out there, and how people keep claiming again that this is a 1950s phenomenon is completely silly. sort of thing like that, So, but I mean, it's one of these things, right? But it's interesting. There's so many of these sorts of accounts here, and worldwide, of the same sorts of things, that every single time he's in the cave, even the fossils you're finding now, and very early bones where they're only hundreds of years old, of giants from 6 to 11 feet tall, that 100% corroborate the story of a Bigfoot-like creature, and the same caves, the same caverns, the same bones you're finding, the same everything. How people keep denying this is mind-boggling to me. I don't get it, right? Like, sort of thing like this, but that sort of thing. So, but anyways, now here I'll show you the sort of Florida one again. There, I wanted to cover that a little bit more, because just simply the strength of how he can bend that tree is pretty impressive, right? And that sort of thing like that. So I'll put that in, and then we'll I'll cover maybe one other little sort of thing, and then anyways, we'll get on to another sort of show after that. But I just wanted to give you an idea here that for sure there's some very interesting sort of these early sort of newspaper reports are in the massive thousands. They're all telling you the same thing. Again, many of these didn't have these sort of wire press at the time, the earlier ones. So there's no way that the guy could know the Bigfoot monster. He described the exact same one in another state there's no way. It's always the same, right? So again, except for size of feet, whether they run on all fours, sometimes they're gorilla-like. Some are shorter and some are taller. Some got longer claws, but always the same at the end of the day in the general sense. And again, I mean, that's mind-boggling, right? Like to keep denying that these things exist is a bit out there. So, anyways, again, I mean, it's interesting, right? Like, I mean, but let's look at that Florida one there next, and then we'll get on to that one, and then continue on. So, folks, here's this fascinating video taken in the Florida Nature Reserve in the Everglades there. Look at the length of this creature's arms, and look at the base area where it attacks the tree and is trying to shake something off of it. And interestingly, in this area, they found quite a few the bark seemingly stripped off around 8 feet tall, 6 to 8 feet sort of range. That creature has way too long of arms, so if it was a person in a suit, they'd have to have some kind of gimmick here where now you can actually get the hands to move even though you have an extension and be strong enough to pull way down at the base of a tree. It's pretty hard to believe. So I would say that this is one of the better films that you can find of this sort of way. So next show there, hopefully we'll be able to get the muskrat lake monster on eventually. Thought what I'd do is I had a lot of old historic accounts and different sorts of from different tribes and things. So what I'll do is an actual sort of some native traditions of Sasquatch. Early mass, do all kinds of different things. We'll cover some interesting things. So if you like about the sort of native traditions and the different ones, and those guys were seeing them way before we were, right? So that sort of thing. So I'd imagine they know a little bit about them. That sort of thing. It's in all their cultures and everything else, and how people all claim that they hallucinated all this is I find the most mind-boggling, insulting thing to them. I mean, it's unbelievable. But anyway, this is just what it is. But the thing is that we have. There is for sure animals and things out there that we are not aware of, and sorry, poor Mr. Scientist there. I mean, you haven't been on every sort of mountain crevice and done everything, right? And you just have to realize that it is a big world, and that sort of thing. And there's definitely a lot of hidden things out there, right? And that sort of thing. And not every person is seeing a log or these sorts of things, right? I mean, if people watched any of my shows, I mean, even if I repeat the odd thing or do this and that, I think that you sort of can see for sure that there is a lot of anomalies that are just too many anomalies, right? Like, I mean, too many correlations, right? I've showed you from ancient history to today, sorry, that random people everywhere, every place, all of them are showing you the same sorts of things, right? Like telling you the exact same thing, right? Like, and from dragons to whatever it is, right? And I mean, so for these things to be not real, it's impossible, because I mean, you can't. The human mind, yeah, it comes. Here's an interesting thing. I had to laugh at this. There's this ridiculous show on about Bigfoot. I can't even remember which one it is, but I've seen so many thousands of them. But the thing is that this one ridiculous one. they got this scientist guy, and he had this theory that people see Bigfoot because the first person says that they've seen a moose, and then the moose turns into a whatever, right? So, but I mean, he actually disproved this sort of his whole thing, and he sounded to me like idiotic, and I'll explain to you why. Is he did exactly what he said, right? He went in a room and whispered to one person. The story, although fairly consistent, a lot of them got most of this. They added extra things or did a little bit of stuff and this and that sort of thing. So at the end of the day, now the story was fairly different from what it originally was, right? Which 100% proves then the opposite of what's going on here, because if that was the case, right, then each time the Bigfoot would be, he'd have three heads, and he wouldn't be called Bigfoot anymore. Now he'd be called Foot Big. He'd be very many zillions of variances and all kinds of things, but only in reality where people are actually observing something, and all of them can keep getting the exact same sorts of descriptions here. Every time the creature, in many massive amounts of accounts, the guy notices that they didn't have much of a neck on them, or that it was really broad, and they might think that the neck is really, but it might have been just part of the shoulders or something or whatever, right? The length of the arms, even way before sort of knowing of gorillas or other sorts of things, right? All these sort of the craniums, the things, you have skeletons in the caves, and all these kinds of things. I mean, it's just endless amounts of sorts of sort of things, from native people to the earliest settlers to every single people and newspapers and all these sorts of things. How could every single one of these be a lie, right? Like, I mean, come on, seriously. You have to sort of really be a scientist here, and a little bit more open-minded. Like your buddy there, Mr. Gallant there. He went on an island that you guys all went there 10 zillion times, and he found a creature that none of us could find for over 100 years. So, and this is just a more easy to discover island, where it'd be much easier to find the creature than something like this that's much more intelligent. They're wild humans and apes, a bit of mixture of both here, it seems, of two different kinds, and maybe even variances of these. But wild humans, and I mean, there's many primitive tribes, right? So that's not hard to believe either, that there could be 10 types of Sasquatch like tribes out there, maybe 20, maybe 50, whatever. As long as there's a small amount of each sort of one, enough to keep the action going, that's enough, right? And because, like I said, there's already physical evidence of these things. Just because people don't want to correlate that they're actually humans in a lot of cases, the scientist guy is going to keep denying it, but it's foolishness. Hello, Mr. Scientist guy, a 6 to 11-foot giants have been found in your caves. They're only hundreds of years old. They have giant red fur on them, or some other color of fur. They have giant feet, and they have big pointy heads quite often. So what else would that not match 100% all these sightings of these Sasquatch, right? And again, how is it that these random people each time describe and draw the same creature? If it was imagination, like this guy claimed with this silly theory, then, which is 100% his theory is true. However, it's not a theory to explain Sasquatch. It's actually a theory to actually prove more Sasquatch is likely real, instead of the opposite of what he was trying to do. This is what I'm saying. I don't think he really thought this out well, right? Because, I mean, seriously, it 100% is the opposite of this. Because again, people would have keep adding all kinds of things. Again, all we ever get is these variances. We get some, they're werewolfish. That could be a separate phenomenon. Maybe there is such a creature, right? So we'll forget that as a sideline. The other ones are all this sort of same, except they're either shorter or taller. They're furry to mid furry to extremely furry. Okay, they usually have pointed sort of heads on them. They usually don't have much of a neck, sort of thing like that. As some accounts, they have lesser width of feet. I mean, it could be, again, a mixture here if they're wild humans and this sort of thing. But as some have longer claws in some of the events and these sorts of things, which would be feasible. I mean, maybe not every, some Sasquatch, maybe they dig and hunt around certain things where their nails do stay shorter, whilst with maybe another one prefers them longer because they hunt more meat or something to use them as talons or something. Who knows? Like, I have no, or maybe the creature's lazy and doesn't feel like it. Just like human beings, you'll get nuts that'll have 2 foot long nails on them and stuff. Not that they're nuts, but I mean they're probably doing it for entertainment value of some sort. But whatever the reason, right? Like, I mean, there is people that sort of get laxed here and maybe just decide never to sort of do their nails, right? So I would imagine a furry ape man could do the same, or lady, maybe, right, or whatever, right? Maybe she wants longer claws to defend against Mr. Sasquatch. Maybe he stinks too much when he's trying to have some amour with her, as far as I know, right? So I mean, there could be a lot of reasons for these sorts of things, but I mean, to call this all lies from your ancient ancestors to all this to today, just because some Darwin and some of your guys that you learned from your professor who learned from the previous one. I mean, come on, you got to start having a bit more of an open mind to this, and start realizing that yes, wild ape human sort of people do exist out here. We're probably this millions of years sort of stuff is not very holding water very well, right? And you can clearly see this. Go watch Mount St. Helens. Watch how all these same things occurred. What you think it took millions takes massive days here, just days, right? Sort of thing. So again, proving everything about the flood could have occurred exactly as they said, right? So, keep these things in mind. And I mean, so if you're a scientist, just have a bit more of an open mind to some of these things, because to keep telling all your sort of historic records here and ancient scientists and everybody all liars, I find insulting. So, anyways, stay tuned for the next show, and thanks for watching. Bye.